So, not even knowing what the evidence is that led to yesterday's search warrant at Mar-a-Lago, some Republicans, like Kevin McCarthy, are trying to help Trump get away with his crimes. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So, not surprisingly, some members of the Republican Party are a little miffed that the FBI searched Donald Trump's home in Florida. Here's some new reporting from CNN. Republicans rush to Trump's defense after FBI executes search warrants at Mar-a-Lago. And that article begins, top congressional Republicans are rushing to former President Donald Trump's defense after the FBI executed a search warrant at his Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida as part of an ongoing investigation into the handling of potentially classified material. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy told Attorney General Merrick Garland to preserve your documents and clear your calendar, warning of an oversight probe when Republicans take back the chamber in the midterm elections. The Department of Justice has reached an intolerable state of weaponized politicization, said McCarthy. Friends, this is political thuggery by Kevin McCarthy, plain and simple, because he has no earthly idea what evidence supported yesterday's search warrant. What if there was a surreptitiously recorded phone call on which Donald Trump was caught, was recorded, saying, oh yeah, I kept those classified documents that I took from the White House, been keeping them in my safe, and I've been selling them to America's adversaries. Seems to me like that kind of evidence would warrant a search warrant being conducted at Mar-a-Lago. Kevin McCarthy has no idea what the evidence is. A little spoiler alert, friends. Stay tuned, because I have a feeling in the future we're going to hear about some secretly recorded phone calls. But the fact of the matter is, Kevin McCarthy has absolutely no idea what evidence supports yesterday's search warrant at Mar-a-Lago. But he's trying to help Donald Trump get away with his crimes nevertheless. It feels kind of accessory-after-the-fact-ish. And then there's Donald Trump himself, telling these absurd lies, outrageous lies, even comical lies, in a statement he released yesterday after the search had been conducted. There's nothing comical about the crimes Donald Trump committed against the United States. But I just did a piece for MSNBC Daily, which is something of a beat-by-beat explainer of how a federal search warrant is issued. The title of that piece, and I'll put a link to the piece in the description of this video, the title is Why the FBI's Search of Mar-a-Lago Feels Like a Shift in the Tectonic Legal Plates. So first, let's take a look at some of the lies Donald Trump told in the statement he released yesterday. He said, it's prosecutorial misconduct. It's weaponization of the justice system. It's an attack by the radical left Democrats. America is broken, a third world country. This is just like Watergate, where operatives broke into the Democratic National Committee. Here, in reverse, Democrats broke into the home of the 45th President of the United States. Blah, blah, blah. So part of what I tried to do in my written piece is meet the force of Trump's lies and the disinformation being spewed by Kevin McCarthy and other Republicans with actual facts and information about how a federal search warrant is obtained. So let's take a few minutes to walk through it. Federal law enforcement agents will conduct an investigation and will reach a point where they think they have probable cause to search, probable cause to apply for a search warrant. The federal agent could be the FBI, the DEA, the ATF. In this instance, it was the FBI. After they reach that point where they believe they have enough evidence to make out probable cause, we'll talk about what that standard means in a minute, they will then draft a search warrant and an affidavit in support of that search warrant. Affidavit is just a fancy word for a written narrative of the facts and the evidence that they have uncovered during their investigation that leads them to conclude they have probable cause to search. After they have completed that narrative, that factual recitation, it's usually in chronological fashion. It's usually pretty inclusive about the nature and course of the investigation and the evidence they've collected up that leads them to conclude they have probable cause to search. They will swear to that affidavit. That becomes a sworn document made under the penalties of perjury, and the FBI agents, trust me, take that responsibility and that oath deadly seriously. So let me talk about probable cause before I move on to the next step of the process. There are a number of different evidentiary standards in the criminal law as they pertain to criminal investigations and criminal prosecutions. Let's start with a low-level standard. Reasonable suspicion. Reasonable articulable suspicion is a very low-level evidentiary standard, and it was set by the Supreme Court in the case of Terry versus Ohio, and it is the amount of suspicion or the amount of evidence a police officer needs to conduct a stop and frisk of somebody in the street. Reasonable articulable suspicion. Pretty low level of evidence. The next level up is probable cause. So probable cause is hard to define, but you kind of know it when you see it. It has to be more than a hunch, but it doesn't have to be a preponderance of the evidence, 51%. Doesn't have to be clear and convincing evidence. Doesn't need to meet the granddaddy of all burdens of proof, proof beyond a reasonable doubt, which is the burden of proof to convict someone at trial. It just needs to be probable cause. The next evidentiary burden, above probable cause, is a preponderance of the evidence, more likely than not, 51%. That's a higher evidentiary showing than is necessary for a search warrant. A search warrant can be issued upon probable cause. So after the FBI agent puts all that information in the affidavit, which is part of an application for a search warrant, and swears to it, it gets brought to a federal prosecutor. And for years and years, my daily responsibilities included evaluating search warrants and arrest warrants for probable cause. So the agent would present the affidavit and bring the supporting evidence to the prosecutor, and the prosecutor had to make his or her own independent assessment of whether the evidence in that sworn affidavit rises to the level of probable cause. And if it does, the prosecutor, and I did this hundreds, maybe more, of times, would sign his or her name to the search warrant application paperwork vouching for the fact that this investigation does satisfy the probable cause standard. And only after a prosecutor signs off approving the application for the search warrant can the FBI agent then go to the federal judge and seek the issuance of a search warrant. And there were plenty of times when I reviewed applications for search warrants and I said, not quite there. Here are a few more investigative details I think we need to shore up before we reach that probable cause standard. And the agent, detective, investigator would typically conduct a follow-up investigation, represent the affidavit, the application for a search warrant to me, and then if it was up to par, I would sign off, putting my name on the line, putting my reputation on the line that this investigation and this sworn affidavit contains sufficient evidence of probable cause. Then the agent goes to the federal courthouse, meets with the judge, and presents all of that to the judge. And then the judge has to review it and reach his or her own independent assessment based on everything that's in that affidavit as to whether the judge believes there's probable cause. And sometimes those meetings will involve the judge asking follow-up questions of the detective or the agent or the investigator to satisfy himself or herself that, yeah, I should sign this as a judge authorizing this search warrant. After that's done and the judge signs off on it, that is a co-equal branch of government, the judiciary, basically putting its name and its reputation on the line that it has made an independent assessment based on the evidence presented in that affidavit and that search warrant application that yes, indeed, there is probable cause to search. All of that goes on before the FBI heads to Mar-a-Lago and searches for the classified documents and information and materials and records that it sure seems like Donald Trump and perhaps his corrupt associates at Mar-a-Lago were unlawfully retaining and concealing. Now, let me take on one other assertion by Donald Trump, because Donald Trump is always his own worst enemy. In the statement he issued, he also helpfully said, "The FBI even broke into my safe." Thank you, Donald Trump. Because if and when we go to trial, let me correct that, when we go to trial against Donald Trump on charges that he unlawfully removed and concealed classified materials, the prosecutors will have to prove that that was his safe. Because if there was anything incriminating in that safe that could be used as evidence against Donald Trump, prosecutors need to prove it was his safe. Donald Trump helped the prosecutors considerably in that endeavor by issuing a statement saying, "The FBI even broke into my safe." You know, when Donald Trump's lips are moving, he's either lying or he's incriminating himself or both. So don't let the Trumps of the world, the Kevin McCarthys of the world, or the other Donald Trump lackeys, sycophants, criminal associates, or co-conspirators fool you into believing that this was not a lawful, honest, ethical, righteous search warrant approved at the highest levels of the Department of Justice, very likely by Merrick Garland himself, approved by federal prosecutors working the case, drafted in the first instance by FBI agents who have been investigating Donald Trump's conduct, and then signed off on, authorized by a separate co-equal branch of government, the judiciary. You know, this is not, as Donald Trump and Kevin McCarthy have claimed, just Democrats executing unlawful search warrants. Nonsense. Nonsense. This was done exactly as it should have been done, and we're going to learn more probably in the not so distant future about the evidence supporting the issuance of that search warrant. Friends, as always, please stay safe, please stay tuned, and I look forward to talking with you all again tomorrow.